The news is full of awful stories about attacks in Aleppo and the millions of refugees who have fled the fighting in Syria. What's really going on there, and why won't the war stop? The Syrian civil war started in 2011. The fighting began because a lot of people in Syria didn't like the way their president, Bashar al-Assad, ruled the country. They wanted the chance to choose their own government. The Syrian uprising began after an event known as the Arab Spring. This was a movement of protest by people in countries in North Africa and the Middle East. Citizens in these countries weren't happy with the way their governments were running things. The war in Syria is being fought between forces who support President Assad and different groups of rebels and terrorists who have their own ideas about how the country should be run and who should run it. Among those groups is one that calls itself Islamic State. This group is also fighting in other countries, including Iraq, and is responsible for a number of terrorist attacks in Europe. And as if that wasn't complicated enough, other countries are involved too. For example, Russia wants President Assad to stay in charge, so it is helping his forces to drive out the rebel groups. On the other hand, the US is helping some, but not all of the rebels. This is because the Americans don't want Assad to remain president, but they don't want Islamic State to take control either. The effect on Syria's people has been devastating. Hundreds of thousands have died, and millions of people have been forced to flee. The vast majority of them have undertaken dangerous journeys, only to end up in overcrowded refugee camps, and often made to feel unwelcome in the countries they arrive in. Those who have stayed in Syria are in grave danger and are seriously short of food, water, and medical supplies. Meanwhile, the fighting continues, and so far, sadly, there is no end in sight.